Hi everyone, this is Phil again. A little more information for those of you who are trying to decide whether or not to rent your motorcycle. This is all based on my experience, and I've got data to back it up, but just to give you some things to think about before you decide to jump in with your bike for rent. So I'm going to be covering a few topics in a few different presentations today. We'll be covering will you make money and what models will rent. We'll talk about the different platforms for peer-to-peer rentals, repairs, insurance, and a few of these other things in future presentations. But for today, we're going to take a look at will you make money and with what bikes. So the first question is, if you live in New York State, no, you will not make money because New York State's vehicle sharing law explicitly excludes motorcycles from peer-to-peer rental. That's because the the governor of New York State obviously knows more about this than you do, and you can't make your own decisions. So we'll leave that to them. If you're not in New York, however, you will make money. Will you make a ton of money? Will you make a little bit of money? Well, that all depends. What are you hoping to achieve? Are you just hoping to offset some of the running costs of your bike? Or do you want to build a small income stream on the side? You won't get rich doing this, but you can make a little bit of money and you can certainly have a lot of fun, meet a lot of good people. So let's take a look. First of all is your bike choice. You can ask any of the AI tools out there which bike makes and models and types rent the best, and you're going to get a pretty consistent answer. And that answer is going to be Harleys and adventure bikes and touring bikes. And in the adventure category, primarily BMW, GS, GSA, and touring bikes, BMW RTs and Goldwings. Not to say that other bikes will not rent, but you do have to be careful. If you have a Ducati Panigale, for example, you will not rent it often, but you will be able to rent it for a good price, and that helps offset the cost of running the Panigale. If that's acceptable to you, then that's perfectly fine. But whether or not you're going to make money and how much you're going to make is going to depend completely on your bike choice. I'll give you an example. Those two top, this is for the first 7 months of 2026. Those two bikes at the top, the Scrambler and what I call the Veloce, which is a multistrada, those are Ducatis. You can see that there's very few bookings on either of those bikes, even though they're fantastic bikes. The multistrada would be a direct competitor to the 1200 GS. In fact, a lot of reviews say it's a better bike. Really doesn't matter. That's not what people want. So for whatever reason, the BMW 1200 GS and 1300, probably the 1250s, also rent very well. I think the GSAs would rent very well. And the one at the bottom there, big blue, is a 1250 RT, which is a bit of a foil for me against the GS bikes. I talked about that in my other presentation, but just to give you an idea of the relative volume of renting the 1200s, GSs versus Ducati as an example. Okay, let's take a look at the financial analysis behind all this. The less you spend on a bike, the lower you can rent it for, which will mean more rentals, which would mean a better cash flow, for more consistent cash flow, if you will. However, the more you book, the more of your time goes into it, the more miles go on the bike, and of course, more tires, more maintenance, etc. So I'm just making some assumptions here. You can play with these assumptions yourself to figure out what you think is right. Bookings, I would say on average, take an hour to check in and an hour to check out. Some are half of that time, some are twice that time. It all depends. And but an hour, I think, is reasonable. If you want to value your time at $25, that's a reasonable dollar figure. If you think your time's worth more than that, change that assumption, but let's work through this. Days average mileage, I think, is about 150. I would have to check, but that's my gut, is on average people do 150 miles per day. Let's make the assumption that you would do your own oil change, $50 for the oil, your crush washer, and your filter. And you do your own valve checks on these R series bikes. That's something that's doable. And you need a new set of tires every approximately, say, 7,000 miles. I know your front probably lasts twice that, but let's just work with $500 as a nice round number. This is really to demonstrate an example. I have two 2016 BMWs GS in the fleet. Both I purchased for $8,000. One was like $8,500. The other one was $8,000. The more popular of the two is this one, and this one I'm estimating this year will have approximately 40 bookings. If you assume 2 hours of your time per booking, and that's probably right when you not only the time spent with that client checking them in and out, but also checking the bike over and taking care of anything on the back end, paperwork and such forth. Yeah, I think that comes down to about 2 hours per rent. And so at $25 an hour, that would come out to, let's say, $2,000. That's just a way to bookmark your time. You may think it's high or may think it's low, but just to identify that there's a certain amount of time there. The days rented on that bike will be 140. At 150 miles per day, that's 21,000 miles. You'll need a set of tires then at 7,000 and 14,000, again at 21,000. So 3 sets of tires. That's going to take 2 oil changes and a valve check. I'm assuming that you can do the valve check yourself and it won't cost you anything. And the oil change, I'm assuming $50, as I said earlier. So let's take a look at all that. The bike is going to generate $8,000 revenue this year, which is what the bike cost me. But after deducting the $2,000 for my time and the $1,600 for 3 sets of tires and 2 oil changes, I'm going to make approximately $4,400. So it's going to take not quite 2 years to pay back the original investment in that bike. Now let's take a look at the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the 2025 GS that I purchased for $18,000. Now that's an incredible price, as you know, for a BMW GS. This is a fully loaded 719 option bike. It had 800 miles on it. You could say that I stole it, but regardless of the $18,000 price, this is the way it's looking for the projections for 2026. It's only going to get 12 bookings at $2 per booking. That means $600 of my time. It will rent for approximately 56 days, so approximately 8,000 miles. That means 1 set of tires, 1 oil change, and every 2 years I'd be doing a valve check on that. So for 1 year, $550. It's also going to generate $8,000 in revenue, but in a very different way. My net income on that will be $6,850. Now it's a much more expensive bike, so it'll take 3 years to pay off. Now, if you had one of these bikes, you're probably paid closer to 24. So it would probably take you 4 years to pay off, but it depends on what you want to do. If you look at the number of hours that I've put in, this is just booking in and out relative to the other bike. This is a fraction of that time, and I'm not accounting for my time to take the wheels around, get new tires put on, doing the oil changes and checking the valve. So there's a time value in there as well that I'm not calculating. I'm also not calculating registration fees and taxes, because in Arizona is completely different than the way it would happen in your state. So I left that out. So that's another thing that you need to factor into this. Of course, the registration and taxes on this bike were quite considerably higher. But in terms of the work effort and the amount of maintenance that goes into this bike, it's a totally different approach than trying to get high volume out of the fleet. So something to consider. So in conclusion, will you make money? Yes, you will make money, but it all depends on the bike that you choose and depends on your objective. And if you If you just want to offset the cost of your bike because you have an expensive, Panigale, or even if you have a 1300 GS, you can see that, yes, you can offset the cost of the bike. If it's a GS, if it's a Panigale, what you're going to get back is, maybe enough money to buy yourself a set of tires or two. But that's all depends on you, what you're trying to achieve. I hope you found this helpful. Like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.